Okay, recording. So, welcome everyone. Mental Health Awareness Week with a theme of nature this year, but really we're kind of looking back a little bit as much as forward. And we've all been talking in the margins and offline about all the stuff we've been hearing from people and the struggles people are having, but also the opportunities that are coming with that. So really we wanted to talk about resilience, the word of the moment, and what that means, how you can actually kind of find it or develop it. But also just some of the stuff we're seeing, some of the concerns we've got, some of the opportunities that come with that. So, yeah, I'm Tom from Mightify. Mostly work with people in emergency services, focus a lot on career change stuff, which is a hot topic, but also a lot of the wellbeing things that come with that. We've got Toby next to me on my screen. Morning, Toby.
Good morning.
Quick introduction for you, Toby.
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, everyone. My name is Toby. I'm UK born and bred, but now based in the far north of Sweden. Been living out here for the last 15 years, working extensively with nature connection and nature engagement, alongside a multitude of other things. Running as a director of two different companies, one Swedish-based, which is nature-based activities, one UK-based, which is working with peer support networks and peer coaching models in the workplace.
Good stuff. So we're definitely going to be asking you a lot about the nature element because you've got so much nature on your doorstep there, and we're probably all bored of the same walk around the same loop in this country for the last 8 months. Catherine, over to you for a quick intro.
So I'm Catherine, similar to Tom. So I work with teachers who might be career changing or feeling a need boost or thinking about that next promotion. So just supporting teachers and starting to get a little bit more into that well-being and psychological stuff, just to support teachers who are going through a tough time, because it is tough times at the moment for quite a lot of people, despite the fact that we're all supposed to be celebrating in the UK because we're coming out of lockdown. We're finding that a lot of people aren't really feeling like that, myself included. So it'd be good to talk today a little bit about that, like what sort of things that we can do if we find ourselves feeling a little bit down and a little bit anxious, or a bit disconnected to how we think we should feel. I don't know, but yeah.
No, 100%. And I think I totally agree from my own perspective. You know, the three of us here are all been kind of trying to maintain and develop businesses through the last 18 months without really knowing what the goalposts are or what support's going to be available or anything like that. And that's, definitely taken a massive toll. I think you make a really interesting point that people are supposed to be kind of, coming out of the sort of chrysalis moment and it's all brilliant and the sunshine and the pub's open, that's all going to be great. But it really doesn't feel like that for a lot of the people we hear from. So we talked before a little bit about compassion fatigue, I think. So I don't know if you found with the kind of people you support who are naturally probably caring and are in caring professions, do you think people are just kind of coming to the end of just exhausted their ability to kind of be positive and to look after others? Is there something in that?
Yeah, I think so. And I think something Toby said earlier before we press record, the sort of the toll that takes on trying to reframe how you're dealing with the next bit and the next bit, like, oh, it's okay because soon we'll be like this. And it's fatigue, isn't it? That you don't kind of realize how much you've been through in the past year, how much you've been putting a face on, the uncertainty, because we're really having to live in the moment in a way that we haven't before, because we could plan holidays, we could plan trips, we could, like Toby said, sort of get that release. Now we're finding that we can't, and we're still a bit unsure as to what's coming next. And I think there is, what I'm noticing on social media and things like that, people aren't necessarily feeling joy and jubilation. And Toby, you made an interesting point about why that might be.
Yeah, so just to sort of carry on from that point, I think the phrase I use is this sort of latency of fatigue. So that tiredness just sits deep in your body and sort of just builds layer on layer on layer. And normally we have, established coping mechanisms to deal with that around sort of breaks and holidays and these kind of things that give us that sort of pressure release and that ability to relax and recharge. And of course, what's happened for very many people is all of those activities that you normally not even think of as coping mechanisms necessarily. They're maybe habituated, going to the gym, going to the pub, going away on weekends, going camping, going on holiday, that you think as sort of more treats and rewards, are actually inbuilt part of the coping mechanism. And in the denial of that, that fatigue just keeps layering on. And the deeper that layer forms, the harder it is to sort of wash away. So what might have been, a little bit of tiredness and fatigue and a night out or a weekend away in a month did enough to top you back up. You've now got sort of a year and a half stacked in your system that's just not going to get dealt with in a night out or a weekend. And I think that sits far more deeply in us than a lot of people actually realise.
Yeah.
I think that's absolutely spot on. I know I've kind of felt that, and I think there's this thing where you think, well, actually, I haven't really been doing that much because I've kind of gone, you're working from home or going to a sort of empty office. You think, well, all I'm doing is, getting up, going to work, going back, watching Netflix or whatever, and you think, well, I haven't really done anything. So how can I be kind of exhausted or fatigued in that sense when normally I'd have been doing all these other things? But like you say, you don't realise that all those other things are actually recharging your batteries a little bit along the way. Whereas it's just been certainly personally, I think just a whole kind of blur of Zoom calls and work without ever kind of those little milestones along the way. But also we were talking earlier about a lot of people we've been working with, in sort of policing or healthcare or teaching, who've been doing that without breaks and all the sort of holidays they might have had. They've had to spend reorganising things, and teachers have had to spend what would have been half term planning for now being also healthcare testing as well as teaching. And so I think there's always layers on it without the extra breaks, and people don't realise, I don't think, that the fundamental base layer of the pyramid of needs isn't happening for a lot of those people either. So yeah, they're not getting the breaks and the holidays, but we were talking earlier about nurses and doctors who said to us, they kind of told, no, you can't have that toast, or no, you can't have a nap, or not sleeping, not eating, kids coming to school having not had their breakfast, and things like that, which are kind of overlooked, but just so fundamental in a normal world, never mind the kind of world we've been existing in recently.
I just want to jump on that if I can, Tom, if you don't mind. That I think that's a really important part of this week, to dive down to that fundamental level. A lot of times when you're talking like mental health awareness campaigns, it's the big umbrella stuff, it's the cacophony, it's the top end of the organisation raising awareness. I think everybody's aware, everybody's really, really tired and jaded. We're not, that's not anything to raise awareness of. It's driving down to the root causes of like, well, what's happening there. And I think those fundamentals are critical, that it's really easy to assume it's happening. That, you're working from home, so of course you're sort of staying hydrated and you're eating well and you're sleeping well because you don't have any other option. It's not like you can go and eat a dodgy burger at 2:00 in the morning outside the nightclub. So there's that assumption in the absence of the bad, there must be good. Whereas actually the flip side is, no, exactly, right? It's like in the absence of that structure and those mechanisms you're used to, you say you sort of flop from the office chair to the couch to watch Netflix and binge on snacks, sleep badly, wash, rinse, repeat. So the absence of the good habits, the absence of our regular habits doesn't mean they've been replaced by good or better habits. They could easily have been replaced by worse, more detrimental habits, or not been replaced at all, adding more to that fatigue. Sorry, Catherine, had a point.
No, totally agree with you. I was going to say, when you were saying about you're going to be looking after yourself and eating right and exercising, and I was thinking, yeah, man, I'm not doing any of that at the moment. I'm doing the absolute opposite of that. I'm sort of enjoying wine in a way that I've not done in a long time. Like I'm on a constant holiday, eating rubbish, not exercising. And I think, it's going to build up over time, that, isn't it? And it's the really obvious things. I know a group of girlfriends of mine, we were sort of saying how we're all unfit and unhealthy at the moment, and we're all buying into these apps. It might be Noom, or it might be Joe Wicks, or it might be whatever that we're buying, and we're all like, they're not telling us anything that we don't already know. It's like we want to just get a quick fix to be able to go, now we're sorted. And it's like it's the real basics that everybody already knows, but we're just not doing. And I don't know why we're not doing it. And also I kind of really do, like we're extremely tired and we're not getting those hits of endorphins or enjoyment and stress releases that we normally would, like going out, seeing people. And so we're sort of compensating for that in unhealthy ways, I guess. And I need to come out of that habit.
I think you're right, but I think also that on the personal level, all that stuff is definitely happening. But also because how many of us went into the first lockdown thinking, right, I'm gonna learn Swedish this month, or I'm gonna learn to bake, or I'm gonna learn to paint or something, and then 2 weeks later, how many people have really done all this stuff? But I think organisationally as well, we're all working with people who are in organisations where they've got that whole layer of extra work on top, and most people have taken on the coronavirus stuff on top of a job they already had, so that's even more demands on them. But the thing that came up for me there was just there's an opportunity here to actually do something about those structural basics that have been kind of exposed more than ever. So why shouldn't nurses be able to park somewhere near the place of work for free? Why shouldn't people actually be able to have a nap at work if that's conducive to their well-being? I saw a really good example of that I think it was on Twitter, where it was an ambulance service where they made their sort of break room free from, it didn't have, workplace posters about procedures and practices on the wall in the break room, because it was a break room, not a work room. And I think, there's opportunities everywhere to actually say, right, everyone's been pushed past their limits in the last 18 months. What can we learn in kind of really basic structural things that have been overlooked for a long time? Sleep, food, rest, working conditions, and actually try and build that. It's a cliche to say, but actually sort of build something back a little bit better. So I think, the organisational stuff is an opportunity there as well as the personal one.
Yeah, and somebody was saying the other day, I noticed this on social media, and I thought this is such a simple point, but it's brilliant. How many times have you been to a meeting, a whole staff meeting, and they've said, okay, this is what we're going to take off you to try and help you with your well-being? It's never the case, is it? They very rarely say, okay, we're going to try and really work on reducing your marking, reducing your work, so you can invest in a little bit of time for yourself to get there. And it would just be such a powerful thing, wouldn't it, if you were a leader of an organisation or a middle manager, to just think, actually, I'm trying to give you some time back so that you can sort of, start back a bit better, replenish yourself, rest. But instead, we're getting the opposite. I know in teaching at the moment, we've had the situation where exams are cancelled, but everybody around the country at the moment is still paying to the exam boards and now examining and now making students, it's such a pressured time, and they're not getting any extra money for that. They're not getting any extra praise for that. It's just something that we're expected to be doing. And it's exhausting. That level of marking, that level of, the rest of a child's future depends on what grades you assign them. It's absolutely exhausting at the moment. And like you say, along with all the coronavirus stuff and the uncertainty, a lot of people are working harder than ever before and thinking about ways in which we can, try and support them to do the best job possible coming out of this is something that should really be front and centre, I think.
And I think there's that point about targets we were talking about sort of off air beforehand, weren't we? That, policing, well, I really hope it doesn't, but it looks like it's going to go back towards target-driven performance indicators and all that stuff. But as we were saying earlier, the performance indicators will never include, are the officers happy? Have they slept? In education, those targets, I assume, don't include, has every kid in that class had a decent breakfast? And same in healthcare, targets don't include, have those paramedics had a break in the last 4 hours? Even though that stuff might be in the, health and safety at work rulings, but realistically, we all know that those people go past those for good reasons, for noble goodwill reasons to get the job done. But I think in the last 18 months, what we've seen is that goodwill bucket is kind of emptier than ever. And I want to ask you, Toby, because obviously, you're out there not just doing nature engagement, but kind of living in it. And I think some people would probably say they've spent more time outdoors than before in the recent times, whether that's just walking around the park because there's nothing else to do or whatever. But are there sort of simple things people can do with that time now, whether they've got 5 minutes in their lunch break in a city or whether they've got countryside to drive into, where they can start to kind of rebuild layers of awareness and genuine engagement with what's around them?
Yeah, absolutely. Just before I address that specific question, Tom, I just want to reflect on something Catherine mentioned there about the renewed appreciation of wine and sort of knowing that you should do things and why am I not. And it sort of segues into this whole nature theme that what's happened, in society, in humanity, is this massive disconnect from the natural world to the extent that we don't feel part of it. We've sort of placed ourselves outside of the animal kingdom and created effectively our own ecosystems, entirely man-made. Cities are not natural things by any stretch of the imagination, no matter how much green space we put in them. And so by losing that connection with nature, we've lost connection fundamentally with ourselves. So why is it so hard to get motivated to do things? Because at its fundamental level, we are social primates. We are basically, that is our animal origins of the animal kingdom. And with that lack of socialization, our ability to motivate is severely compromised. So sitting on the couch saying, I should, never gets you out there as much as a friend knocking on your door, giving you a ring, saying, put your trains on, meet me outside, we're going to go for a walk. Like, how much does that generate action? And that forced lack of socialization and the restrictions within socialization is a fundamental cause of where we're at in the fatigue levels, quite simply. To expand on that, if you look, going through the whole series of products I offer, at the absolute top end is a program called Be Your Best Animal Self. And it is that like full circle to that really owning your place in the animal kingdom, and then getting that self-understanding and self-ownership to then occupy the best place you can within your workplace. It's funny because it sounds completely disconnected until you do the program, and then you realize, oh, that makes total sense. But it's very much a sort of hand-holding exercise to reconnect people with nature, therefore reconnect them with themselves by a lot of internal reflection, and then put that externally again of how you can best implement that within your organisation. So that goes back to the question you actually asked, that there's the awareness of time in nature is beneficial. And it's interesting, within the pandemic, most people have just sort of naturally drifted there. All right? In the absence of going to the gym or the pub and you've been allowed out 1 hour a day, it's like, well, I'll go out and I'll just go to a natural environment. But that's where the disconnect shows, because they sort of get there and it's like, okay, nature, I'm in you. What now, right? And for me, what's interesting as I look at people, students that come on my courses and people that post on social media, when I see them in nature, it's far more like looking at somebody visiting a museum or a zoo. They're sort of looking around, but there's no engagement there. It's like there's a glass window and exhibits on one side and then on the other, and there's total sensory disconnect. So one of the first things we do to get people reconnecting with nature is getting to 3 foundational elements. That's sensory awareness, movement, and breathing. And I'll take that all the way back to the point we made earlier. Movement and breathing is one of those things so fundamental, so overlooked, but is a borderline superpower once you master it. And we're so used to just walking in a certain stifled, inappropriate, biomechanically inappropriate manner. And we hold a lot of tension in our breathing with never even knowing it. And we're not even using typically 20% of our sensory awareness. And that's because the modern society is just sensory overwhelming. So that's actually a body coping mechanism that shuts our sensory perception down because it would just be too much to deal with otherwise. But by putting ourselves in nature, we can start to reconnect to those things. And so we're sight-dominated animals. We have bifocal vision front-mounted, which is putting us into the predation level of species. As opposed to sort of side-mounted. But it's easy to fixate and focus on that. So what I want people to do, if they're in nature, is just try to not focus on what you're seeing and start to engage your other senses. So what can you hear and what can you smell? And then as we start to work with that, what we want to do is start to filter out the man-made noise and focus on the natural. Now this happened inadvertently as the traffic stopped. A lot of people post on LinkedIn and social media, it's sort of, 8 months ago now, there's suddenly all of these birds that have landed and living in the hedge outside my house. No, they were always there. You just didn't hear them because of all the traffic driving past and the planes flying over. Now, that traffic has come back, but we can be very selective with our sensory perception. So if we're out in the garden, and I'm a huge fan, the most accessible thing is to begin on your balcony or in your back garden or in your local park, and just try to really pick out those natural sounds. So bird song and bird language, especially now into spring, is one of the key ones to focus on. And then what other natural sounds can you hear? It can be wind blowing in the leaves, wind just moving through the trees on the ground. And again, with our olfactory sense, because that's so important in so many things from the neural side of things, without getting too much into science, we want to start turning that back on. And you may have to get off the beaten path for that. If you're kind of walking past 20 people wearing however much cologne and perfume, that's going to be olfactory overwhelming for you. So it might be you need to take yourself off to the side, sit yourself down at the base of a tree for 5-10 minutes, and just start to dial out those man-made scents, and try to get in. If you sat at the base of a tree, can you smell the tree? Or what can you smell around you? Can you smell the ground? And we've got that perception. What's one of the most refreshing things that every sort of conditioner company wants to mimic is like wet grass after rain, right? It's a very natural sense of immediately attracted to, or the impending rain coming. So start to engage with those senses. Movement and breathing. Key thing, without going to specific breathing exercise, focus on movement. We move unnaturally and too quickly. And that has a disproportionate of our effect to actually engage the natural environment. So the one thing we want to do to start to get engagement with nature and re-engagement with ourselves is slow our movement right down. Now, I do this as an exercise with people when they first arrive here. Walk as slowly as you possibly can, and then walk again, halve that speed, walk again, halve that speed, and that's the pace that we need to work out, right? And people can't believe how ridiculously slow they're going. Now, I'm going to actually give you a specific task to try at home to understand natural movement, right? How we should be walking in natural environments. So what I want to do is get, if you're a little bit unsure of yourself, a plastic beaker. If you're a little bit more confident, up the game and go for glass, but it doesn't need to be big. And I want you to fill that to the absolute top. And without holding too much tension to your body, hold this down at sort of navel level, just sort of about a foot in front of you, and just start to walk without looking at the glass and without spilling any. Okay? Now, if you're a little bit shaky like me at times, okay, don't fill it right to the top. And the reason we go for a small container is because, if you don't do it, then, you're not spilling the pint glass on the carpet kind of thing. But what that will give you is straight away a mindfulness exercise, because when we go to nature, often we're not shutting our brain off at all. We're just taking that whole cacophony of noise with us and getting stressed, even more stressed about it. So this gives us a little bit of skin in the game and a task. I don't really want to spill this. Maybe put a good whiskey in it instead. I don't know. But the whole idea is to get that slow, steady movement. Okay, do it indoors if you want to. Do it outdoors, even better. I am going to tie one breathing practice in, and there's going to be a lot more of this following. I'll be cascading this through these guys because, as I said to you before we went online, my wife and I are working extensively on getting some of these programs uploaded now into an online format so people can access them. But what I want to do, if you're walking with your glass, is on your inhale, you're going to move your left leg for a step. And on your exhale, you're going to move your right leg. Okay, so you're going to tie your movement with your breathing. And I just want you to have a nice, natural breathing state. If you're feeling tense, because you've got the single malt, all right, or something more expensive, what you're going to try and do is acknowledge that tension and breathe that out. So you're going to isolate the specific muscle group where you've got the tension. Say, on my exhale, and as I move, I'm just going to try and consciously release that tension, whether it be from my shoulders, my arms, whatever. So now we're starting to plug into that internal proprioception, because most of us are completely disconnected from the bodies that we occupy, sadly, and we don't understand the amount of tension that we're holding internally within our internal organs and within our muscular structure. So what we want to start to do is recognize that in the first instance. Once we can dial that in and say, I feel I've got tension in here, then we can start to work through that and get all of the benefits that come with it. This will work inside the house. It will work even better in a natural environment. So if you're going to go out to the park, take your glass with you, take your beaker, take your water bottle, find a nice quiet spot, fill it up, and just don't go for time, because you'll be looking at your watch. So go for amount of paces. So you might say, I'm going to take 20 steps. Start with that, 10 left, 10 right paces, and see how you feel on that. And if that feels good, increase the amount of steps. If you feel you're getting more tense because you're a bit over competitive and you spilt it, now you're getting mad, just stop the whole thing. If it's water, drink it, because most of us are critically dehydrated anyway. Relax and start the whole thing again. If you can get to 20 paces in that slow breath control manner without spilling anything, you will already start to have more positive internal communication and acknowledgement of your body and its structure and how it is. And that's a place we can start to work from. Sorry, that was a very long-winded answer.
Oh, no, I love it. And I want something on breath. You were saying about breathing. What can we... So, like you were saying about exhaling with the water as well. Is there anything that you can just do breath-wise? Just like... Because I'm really interested in that. Yeah, go on.
There's a multitude, and again, like I said, it's an absolute superpower. But I'll give you two exercises that are my absolute favourites, and the ones I start everybody with. One is actually used to help reduce stress, especially in crisis. So if we sort of post-adrenal dump, we use this a lot in the emergency services, especially the fire department. Is what's a technique called 4x4x4. So it's a 4-second inhale by a 4-second hold by a 4-second exhale. Okay, and you're going to consciously count that time off in your head. So 1 1,000, 2 1,000, 3 1,000, 4 1,000 on the inhale. Repeat for the hold, as in hold your breath, and repeat for the exhale. Okay. I love tying in olfactory awareness with that one as well. So on the inhale, I'm going to try and identify as many scents as I can. And these don't have to be natural. So this could be, the condition on my clothes, the coffee on my breath, the cigarette someone smoking near me or whatever. And then in the 4-second hold, consciously acknowledge those scents. Then on the 4-second exhale, sort of cleanse them out and try to find some new ones on the new inhale. Okay, so that's the 4x4x4. The other thing is posture related to breathing. So take exactly that, your 4x4x4, but now try to do it sort of hunched over where you've compressed your diaphragm. And acknowledge how tough is that. Then try to do it really, really stretched out. And there'll be some tension there as well. And then try to find that middle ground where that breath comes really powerfully and positively and easily. This is something I actually teach our fire department recruits. When we're working with breathing apparatus, we're working down low, you're under an incredible duress. But the moment we compromise our structure and arch our back over like that, we're really giving ourselves problem in our oxygenation levels and therefore effective levels. So I'm constantly getting people in the smokehouses just sort of correct their posture up and just open up that diaphragm, let that oxygen actually do its work. So it's something as simple as that, of just getting that biomechanics a little bit straightened out. But play with it all. So you don't only know what the good feels like, you know what the bad feels like. So if you get into a stress situation, so you start to build that confidence to be like, okay, if I can just get my breath work going, I'll probably do okay. So the first thing I need to do is make sure I've got the right posture, that whatever oxygen's coming in is maximised and can do its actual job that I want it to do, because it's so connected to every system within our body. Loads more than that, but those are two really nice, fun, easy ones to start with and play with and practice with for any position, seated, standing, or whatever the case may be.
I love it. That was brilliant. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Fantastic. And something that everyone can do just sitting at the desk as well. I found, as you were talking, I found myself thinking, actually, where am I kind of in that postural sitting down? So, fantastic. And I know certainly just that it seems a long time ago now, but before lockdowns, when I came to the forest in Sweden with you, Toby, and you said, right, what can you see? What can you hear? And coming straight off the plane, I said to you, well, nothing. There's a lot of trees and a lot of snow, but that's about it. And actually, there wasn't, there was a lot of other stuff going on, but I had no idea kind of how little of it I could sense, because I wasn't using. I was just totally focused on what was in front. So it really does work, and it is very grounding and very, mindful.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the origin of the word mindfulness is to be present in the moment. And all of these exercises really sort of hammer that. It drowns out the external thought, and it forces us to actually get into the here and now in an effective, authentic manner. And like I said, we start with that awareness, and then we build on it. These are just very much absolute foundation exercises to get people in that space to then sort of go and grow from there. And of course, we've got all the other senses to deal with as well, which we've not even mentioned. But like I say, movement and breathing are one of the easiest and simplest ones to start with, especially if you're not under mentorship or guidance. You can do these at home absolutely yourself.
No, I think that's brilliant. I think it ties in perfectly with where a lot of people are at the moment. What you just said there about being, authentically and kind of effectively in the moment, because there's so much going on, isn't there? That what should have happened in the past or what's going to happen in the future, but we can't control any of that. So, like you say, having some little basic tools to be more in the moment is perfect, and it's everywhere, isn't it? People say that all the time, but actually having the tools to do it is a whole new level that I think most of us haven't quite got to yet. So I think that's fantastic. Great stuff. Well, so we'll look out for more stuff from Toby on those along the way, and then hopefully when things all kind of do ease off, we can all come and practice it in northern Sweden too, and actually get a change of scenery and do it for real. Because I've got a lot of foxes and squirrels in the garden to look at, but it'd be nice to have some more exciting animals as well.
Yeah.
Bears and wolverines. Exciting until you see one, and then it's No, but that's a great point you make, Tom. That's great you even acknowledge that wildlife there, because how many people living? There's no wildlife around me. There's no birds here, and we're surrounded by that. But again, we've just separated ourselves out into our own little ecosystem, our own perception. So to even just know these animals are in my neighbourhood is a fantastic start, because then it starts us to dial in on the really interesting stuff. Once you get into the more, the foundational nature literacy and the more meaningful nature connection, just acknowledging the fact that these things are even there is the first step on the way. And as you rightly say, there's been a long haul coming into the situation we are now. I think that lack of optimism, Catherine, is something you nailed earlier on, is absolutely true, that people do have a bit of, sense of foreboding or lack of optimism moving forward. And so these exercises and more will help immensely just get into that grounding moment, get into that mindfulness, help with not only the coping mechanisms, but just get us into that internal dialogue and the conversation where we start to sort of process and solve some of those problems that we're facing. The key thing is to justify the time in doing it. So we start now with just some simple practices that take just a few minutes. But like you say, with all of those pressures, all of that increased workload, all of that excess that's coming on us, we must absolutely find time for ourselves. That's why we're in the problem. People are dehydrated and don't have sleep and have poor nutrition. And it's all well and good saying, I don't have the time. At individual level, we have to start making it. We have to prioritize our own well-being. Organizations must be accountable and must change, absolutely, but that's going to be very slow. So change at the individual level is going to be the fastest acting thing. And that's why I want to make this interactive. And I'd love to hear from people in the comments, wherever this gets posted, with those basic exercises that we just highlighted there. Try them out and give us the feedback on how it is. But also let us know, at that bottom end of the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, what is it you're missing? What is the thing that's spiraling a little bit out of control for you? Because if there's commonalities in there, we can start to address that together.
I totally agree. I think you can do that across all the aspects we're talking about. The whole sort of whole person approach of your work or your family life or your health or whatever it is. And just that's a really good question to ask yourself, that we ask our clients all the time: what's missing? And actually, if you can say, right, and actually, can I find 5 minutes today for that, and 10 minutes for it next week, and 20 minutes for it the week after, then you can build it into your life. And we're all three of us are definitely on that road of trying to hold organizations to account and trying to change the big structural things. So we're definitely doing that. But equally, the immediate thing is to build it into your own diary. So I think that's fantastic advice.
Yeah, and I love when you were saying that, Toby. Just as you're talking, I think this is something that we should be doing with students in schools, because we know this as adults, that this is what we need to do, but I'm a bit late to the party with things like this, and it's taken me a long time to realize that actually my health is important. Doing things like this is really important. I think I probably hit my 30s before I was thinking, oh yeah, actually I probably do need to slow down and look after myself. But if we can get ahead of the curve and actually talk to our teenagers or talk to young students about this stuff and about how important it is to just be aware of your surroundings and take time to engage with nature and not always be, linked to social media, linked to your peers, actually linked to your surroundings. I think it'll be such a powerful thing, because it is what is missing a lot of the time. So more power to you, Toby. It's brilliant work that you do. It really is.
Thank you. And like I said, there's more coming. It's been slow for me. I am a tech Neanderthal. Moving into the online space has been challenging, but we're definitely getting there. And I'll be really excited to share that with you guys as it sort of moves forward.
Yeah.
Fantastic. No, great stuff. Thanks for your time, everyone. And yeah, there'll be lots more to come this week and beyond. So we'll post this everywhere we can. And absolutely, as Toby said, get involved in the comments or drop each of us a message. Let us know what's working, what's not, what's missing, what have you found that works for you. Because the more you can share that stuff, good and bad, the more it will help the collective. So yeah, thanks again, guys. And I'm sure we'll see you all soon.
Thank you.
Bye.